Welcome. It is Tuesday at noon. I'm so excited you're here. My name is Barbie Winterbottom, and I am the founder and CEO of the Business of HR and the host of The Table. And as I do every week, a lot of folks question, why would you call a weekly talk show The Table? Well, for my entire career, I have heard women and human resources professionals clamoring for a seat at that illustrious table. And so I decided it was time to stop waiting for an invitation and build my own table and invite each and every one of you to claim your seat right here with me, use your voices, share your stories, and engage with one another. And so that's what we're here to do every Tuesday at noon. And we couldn't do this without the support of our friends at Daily Pay. Daily Pay is an on-demand pay provider that integrates seamlessly with your organization's payroll system that allows your people to access any of their earned but unpaid wages at any time through an app on their phone. It is not a predatory payday loan. There is no interest involved. It is their money. They can access it as they need to, and they can pay a very nominal fee to transfer the money immediately. Or I believe some transfers these days are even without cost. So please, if you are at all interested in bringing forward a benefit to your people that will allow them to access their money on demand, Daily Pay is where you want to go. So with that, I'm super excited to share with all of you. My guest this week is Donna Cutting. Donna is a three-time author. Her latest book is Employees First, and that's what we're going to talk about today. She is also the CEO and founder of Red Carpet Learning and has an amazing organization where she helps other companies understand what it's like to build a culture of kindness built on amazing human experiences. So with that, I am thrilled to bring Donna Cutting onto the table. Here she is. Yay, welcome.
Thank you, Barbie. It's so good to see you, and it's so great to be on your wonderful show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So I am thrilled, and I love when our folks are, engaging. Hello, Carla. Wonderful to see you. We love you.
Hi, Carla.
Stephanie, welcome. Thrilled you are here. Michelle, thank you for joining. Always great to see your faces. And, it's so great to have the engagement we have during the show. So if you're watching, we encourage you to share with us, where are you from? Where are you watching from? It helps us to really feel inspired as we learn more about our audience. We love your questions. We love your comments, and we try to engage with as much of the questions and comments as possible. So definitely feel free to continue engaging. It really helps us feel excited about what we're doing and that we're not just talking into a camera. So thank you everyone for being so great. And Stephanie wants to know if we're hiring. I'm not sure if she's asking you, Donna, or me, but I don't know. I'm not really hiring right now, but I do know a lot of companies who are. So if you want to reach out, Stephanie, I'm happy to chat with you. Sam, welcome. Thank you for being here, everybody. All right. So Donna, you have written an amazing book, and I've had the privilege of having this book for a while now and being able to read through it and some of the stories. So I always like to initially start off with kind of what brought you to the point of wanting to write this book. You've written two others. What's your story, your origin story for this? And then kind of we'll talk about some of the context, because I'm loving so much of what you've put in here.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, so my first two books were all about rolling out the red carpet for your customers, right? And in fact, my first book, the whole premise was, what if we could treat our customers like stars? And so over the last decade, I've been working with organizations on how to create that red carpet customer experience. And throughout that work, realizing that I skipped a step, that the first step is actually, how do we treat the people who work at our organization? Because if you think about it, how do you get an hourly employee who is perhaps more than likely never received a red carpet customer experience to be able to give that. And so it's been sort of brewing in my mind for the last several years that, my gosh, the book I probably should have written first was about employees, about your team members. And then we had, sadly, a worldwide pandemic. But one of the upsides for me was, downside and upside was, all of a sudden I had lots of time on my hands, and it felt like the right time to write this book, Employees First.
That's wonderful. And I love the connection that you make. And, you know, so much of what you have in your book is a lot of the language and the concepts that I use when I'm consulting with organizations or coaching individuals, because the way in which we treat our employees truly does set the stage for how they treat each other, their internal stakeholders, and our external customers, right? So I love that you really articulate it beautifully through story and data, much better than I do. So I'm excited to jump into it. And hey, Christy, I'm so glad to see you. Can't wait to see what you've got going on. I know so many amazing people here. So I want to dive right in, if you're good with this, on some of the content you have here. So, you know, really, I think it's chapter 3 where we talk about cultivating a culture of kindness, which is such an important element of our culture. And we don't talk about it enough, right? A lot of people are like, they roll their eyes. And I have to admit, at a point in time, I was probably one of those people where I was like, oh, here we go, right? Like I absolutely believe in being kind to everyone. But sometimes when you talk about something so much, it's like, do you really believe it? Or are you just saying it because you're supposed to say that, right? But you share a story here from a leader at the Oregon Pacific Bank. So I have the book, guys. I'm reading out of it because otherwise I will not get it accurate. And so there's a couple of things that I really like about what the gentleman who founded the bank, his commitment to his people and to giving back to his community. So every employee received 48 hours of paid leave every year to volunteer in their community. Now, I've worked for a company where we got 1 day a year to go volunteer, but 48 hours, that's amazing. Like, that's really putting your money where your mouth is when we talk about we want to be a part of our community and give back. Right. You then are funding it. That's a whole different ballgame versus just talking about it. So I'd love to hear more about your experience with this individual and this bank and some of the stories that they were able to share with how they've instilled that culture of kindness in a place where we wouldn't normally even expect that, a bank, right? Banks are not known for being warm and fuzzy and caring, and they're rather cold and have kind of a pretense about them. And we wouldn't naturally think of kindness and banking. But here, this guy and this company is doing it likely better than most.
Yeah, it was really great because I got to speak with several of their employees, but the first person that I met and interviewed was Ron Green. He's not the founder of the bank who set that in motion, but he's the current CEO. So the founder did set that in motion, and Ron is the current CEO. And but it's so interesting because when you think of banker, right, you don't necessarily and this is obviously a story that we tell ourselves. It's not necessarily true, but you don't think of like someone who talks about love at work, like in a positive way, that we want to care about each other, that we want to love each other. And yet that was like infused in our entire conversation. And so this guy really, truly walks the talk. And then, they shared stories of one of their bankers finding out that during the fires, they had a lot of fires, every year actually in Oregon where they are. And during the fires, one of the banking customers lost everything, lost their farm, was trying to evacuate, had all kinds of animals that they were trying to evacuate. And without even thinking about it, the teller at the bank just offered her land to the customer and, helped move all of their animals over to their personal home. And you don't think about that level of kindness, right? It's like people might have empathy, they might have sympathy even, but not just without even thinking about it, offering solutions. And there were all kinds of stories like that. But what I thought was most impressive and what I think is most important, and perhaps why we kind of roll our eyes when we hear that term kindness, is that these are acts, and a lot of times when we think of creating a culture of kindness, we think of random acts of kindness, right? Which are wonderful to do. But true kindness actually comes from the way we treat each other every day, from having a level of respect, from having a level of curiosity about other people as opposed to just making judgments, and then having a level of empathy where we can put ourselves in the shoes of others, and then that causes us to act, occasionally on their behalf. And I think that sometimes the kindness has gotten stuck in that like feel good random acts
Right.
piece. And yet if you look on social media today, you can see how unkind we are actually being to each other. And so a lot of what this book is about stop with the quick fixes and let's go a little deeper. Let's be real kind. Let's be real respectful. Let's be real caring.
Yeah. It makes me think about when you see a child, maybe you're in the grocery store or at church or some public space, and you see a child who is just being disrespectful, unkind, throwing a temper tantrum, which I get. Lots of kids, no matter who their parents are and what their parents do, throw temper tantrums. But at a certain age, we tend to grow out of that behavior, right? And so when you're looking at like an adolescent child who is incredibly disrespectful or unkind, we immediately think, what's going on at home, right? How is that child being treated for them to feel as though this is how we treat others? And it's the same thing when we think about employees. And I'm not infantilizing employees, so please nobody misinterpret that. But the relationship is very similar. When we model kindness and we treat our employees with kindness and respect and dignity, and we elevate them to total human beings, not one-dimensional employees, they feel that, right? We all feel that. And to your point, I say this all the time, culture is the result of every conversation, every interaction, every email, every point of connection you have with everyone in your organization. That is culture. It is the way you feel about the work you do and the workplace. And so when we can build in kindness, respect, and humanity into those points of connection, it's going to inspire those people to carry that forward. And I've worked in a few organizations who have done this really, really well, and a couple that have not done it well at all. And it's palpable, right? When you see it and you feel it, and everyone knows that this is the expectation, it's almost like a living thing that we have that level of respect for. And when you don't, it's just as obvious. And I love how you've shared that through these stories in your book. And then we also talked about, in that same area, that same section, about how you've collected data when people were not treated with kindness in the workplace, and how that manifests itself into some pretty harsh statistics when we think about those people are the ones interacting with our customers. And so I'm going to read, this is on page 44 of the book, just FYI, and you guys can see I've underlined it because that's what I do. So when we talk about, you had a poll of 800 managers and employees in 17 different industries, which I think that's really important too, right? You really went across multiple types of multiple industries. And you didn't do this. I know it's the walktheridge.com.
Yes.
So according to walktheridge.com, 48% of people who were not treated with kindness and civility. So 48% of them intentionally decreased their work effort.
That's huge.
Half of your employees, half of the people in this poll said when they were treated without kindness and civility in the workplace, they reduced their effort by 48%.
Because if you feel like someone doesn't care about you, then why should you care? Right? That's yes.
And it makes complete sense. 47% intentionally decreased the time they spent at work. 80% lost work time worrying about the incident. So whatever the event was where they were treated poorly or unkindly, 80% lost work time. 80. That's huge. That's a huge number. 66% said their performance declined, and 78% said that their commitment to the organization declined. So if you're one of those naysayers out there, like I may or may not have been in the past, who says kindness in the workplace doesn't matter, there's data supporting it. Now, we could probably take that another level, right, and equate it to dollars, because we know that ultimately when we measure a business, we want to look at a P&L. But those statistics clearly translate to dollars. And we've got to pay attention to the reality of what our people are telling us, because that's so important.
Bingo, 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 because that's what this whole Great Resignation is really all about.
Yes.
We have gone through, many of us have gone through a collective values readjustment where we're starting to ask ourselves, how do we really want to spend our time? What really matters? Where do we want to be? And if we have felt like we've been in this workplace where we're not listened to, we're not respected, where our opinions don't matter, where we're not included, where we're not receiving, whether it's equitable pay or an equitable seat at the table, right? People are making decisions about where they want to be, and it's not that. And I think I loved what you said, Barbie, about your culture being in every interaction in the workplace, because what I think has happened over the last, if you think about it, for the last decade and a half, employee retention has been a hot topic long before this pandemic. And it just kept getting worse and worse. It was not getting any better, despite the very many programs and initiatives that people would launch in their organizations to help retain employees. So the real work starts now. This is where we really have to go, okay, this is not a program, that we can, and speaking from HR, right? This is not something we can put on HR and have them roll out a program and it's going to fix everything. We've got to start asking ourselves the hard questions about, have we been listening to the people at our organization? Do we let them do we give them a voice, right? Do we think about the way we communicate with them? So they're, not just informational communication, but interpersonal communication.
Mm-hmm.
Are we sincerely giving them the time and the attention and the presence that we are then asking them to give our customers every single day? And I think sometimes it's really hard to look at that. But this is the work that must be done if you want to create a place where people actually want to come to work.
It's so true. It is so true. And, we see it all the time when folks are treated well, how even in our personal lives, right? People will meet you where you are, and you can help raise them up, or you can go down with them.
Yes.
And it's our job as leaders to model the behaviors we expect from other people. So our culture, it's not a project or an initiative. And I have a very unpopular opinion here, but it hurts my heart when I see folks with the job title like VP of People and Culture. And the reason it hurts me is because to me, that creates the perception that culture lives here and that this person and his or her team owns the culture for that organization. And no one individual or no one individual team owns culture. Every single person throughout an organization contributes or detracts from the culture because it does live in every interaction. And it doesn't mean, and this is what I stress to my clients when I'm talking about them, it doesn't mean it's a free for all where everybody's just walking around hugging each other all day long. No, sometimes respect means we have boundaries and we hold those boundaries and we say no and we challenge one another to do better, but we do it with respect. And sometimes holding a very hard line and very tough position that a lot of people don't like is actually the kindest thing we can do, because it means we're being true to ourselves or true to our mission or true to our purpose. So never confuse being kind with not having boundaries or structure or infrastructure.
Right.
I think it's creating the boundaries and the infrastructure that allows that kindness to scale and permeate all areas of the business because we set that expectation. But I think too many folks confuse that with, like, I think you even wrote like the kumbaya, the woo woo stuff. And, we're just going to have a bunch of people who aren't working hard, who just, want to play ping pong all day. And that is not at all what we're talking about, right? It's not at all. It's the language we use. It's the way we connect. And it's the way we challenge. It doesn't mean don't challenge one another, but it's the way you do it that matters.
Exactly. We definitely don't want that. Like, kindness does not mean just let everybody run rampant with, no direction and not making the hard decisions. It actually is at times making the hard decisions. And it is just what you said. It's the way, though, that those decisions are communicated. Did you include people in the conversations, right? So even if people don't get exactly what they were hoping for, they feel like their voice was heard in that process, right? And then how are you communicating it? And I think this is also the hard stuff, because the reality is we're all human beings, we're all human beings. We all have our stuff and our walls that we put up. And so that default way of communicating is what's happening in the workplace. We've got a bunch of human sort of like going by their default methods of communication. And so what this book calls you to do is to be a little more intentional, a little more thoughtful. So it doesn't necessarily mean everybody gets what they want, but let's be a little more thoughtful and intentional about how we communicate those things. And the other thing, when you say kindness, sometimes it is lifting people up, and lifting people up is seeing things in them that they didn't even know existed. And so challenging them to rise to the occasion and become stronger, better, more knowledgeable, more equipped to do bigger and better things. It may not feel good in the process, but that's actually one of the things that makes people feel more valued.
Yes, absolutely. And seeing them for who they are, right? Not trying to fit them into a mold, but allowing people to be who they are in that moment, and respecting that and honoring them as again, as that multidimensional person. One of the things I say all the time with my clients and on the show and in the book that, may or may not ever get finished, but we'll see, is, employees want and expect a consumer-like experience in the workplace. And it baffles me that employers are not grasping this concept yet. And if it's the last thing I do, I swear I'm going to get this message out to the world. But, we live and breathe by this device. right? We bank on it, we communicate on it, we order everything that we need in our home, our groceries, we have meals delivered. We do a lot of really complex items and events through this phone. And yet, when we bring on someone as an employee, all of a sudden we start to treat them like they can't think independently. And, one of my favorite things to do when I start working with a new company is to sit through their orientation. When I sit through the orientation, it tells me a whole lot about that company. Am I filling out a bunch of papers, like actual pieces of paper that I'm handing over to another person? And then that person takes that piece of paper and enters the information into a system that I could have done myself, but they're having me put it on paper versus going into the system. And I'll ask, why am I putting my direct deposit information here when I could just enter it there? Well, what if you get it wrong? We want to, the whole control of everything. And my pushback is, well, what if I get it wrong?
Yeah.
Then I fix it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
You cannot protect. I think the intention is to help, to protect employees from making mistakes so that they get paid on time, so that the information is accurate, et cetera, et cetera. But my challenge is always, you don't think that they can enter their information into that? Because trust me, they can. Yeah. And if they get it wrong, then they can fix it. So stop infantilizing, I always say that wrong, infantilizing adults because we don't trust that they can do it right. Allow them, empower them to do what they need to do and create processes and infrastructures that allow them to thrive. And if they get off course, then help them with a course correction, but don't treat them as though they can't think independently. And I think that's what we've done for so long, that then that's how people treat our customers. When a customer sends an email asking about X, Y, and Z product, and you answer them with, no, we don't have it.
Right. And that's the end. Right. That's the end. Right.
Instead of, I'm sorry, we're out of stock right now, but may I offer you these options? Or what, like getting them to think differently about how would they want to receive that information.
Yeah.
And so I think you've done a great job of giving us some examples. I'd love to know, so we do have a question from someone. Can they buy all of your books together that you've written? So I don't know the answer to that. So we'll let Donna share with us how you can buy her books.
Thank you, Jamie. So all of my books are available anywhere books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, your local. You could go to IndieBound at I think it's .org or .com. But that's where you can buy from your local independent bookstore. So if you want to support them. And so the first one is called The Celebrity Experience: Insider Secrets to Delivering Red Carpet Customer Service. The second one is called 501 Ways to Roll Out the Red Carpet for Your Customers. And then the third and the latest is Employees First: Inspire, Engage, and Focus on the Heart of Your Organization. But I think, like, if you went to Amazon and you put in Donna Cutting, Cutting, like with scissors, all of those books would come up. So you'd be able to order all of them together. Thank you for asking. Yeah. And Barbie, I just want to say there was so much in what you just said, because I think, first of all, there's a whole chapter in Employees First about employee onboarding, and really that it needs to be so much more intentional and inclusive than just that paperwork that we talked about, right? Yep. But then even what you just said, there was in terms of like infantiling people, and we're so stuck in our processes that we've had for so many years that even a worldwide pandemic where we all had to change everything, immediately within days, we're still seeing employers who just want to go back to the status quo and go back to normal. So even looking at the idea of remote working. Like I had a sales and marketing professional say to me, like, she worked from home during the pandemic, and there was so much productivity she was able to have. And now her employer is saying, no, we have to be back in like 24/7, or, 5 days a week. And she said, all I need is one day, like just one day where I could knock out some calls at home, and it would make such a difference. And yet people are still reticent to give that, to let go of that control. And then you've got tethered employees who have to be there on the location. But we could look at things like job sharing and more flexible schedule, like scheduling people in ways that you've never scheduled them before. And honestly, and that's just one example, and you gave another great example. It's really looking at, do our systems support our people in a way that they can thrive? And I'll tell you, my husband, and he is absolutely fine now, doing really well, but he just spent some time in the hospital. And the people that we interacted with, many doctors, nurses, CNAs, housekeepers, were extraordinary. They were wonderful. Like, I give them the red carpet seal of approval, every single one of them. The process on the other hand, like the communication and getting any information, because one person doesn't know, one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. That's what needed addressing. And I think it's interesting, because a lot of times people will bring me in because their people just don't get customer service. And when I dig a little deeper, I find it, well, if you supported them a little bit better with better processes, and you're willing to look at, are we rolling out the red carpet, or are we rolling out the red tape? Right.
I love that.
Yeah. So if you look at that, that's maybe the work that needs to be done, so that people can feel freer and more empowered to do the job that you want them to do.
I just wrote that down. Red carpet or red tape. I'm so stealing that. You heard it first. I'm using that from now on. So, Donna, I will quote you as often as I can. But I love that. Yes. I talk often about when we look at transformation and change, because a lot of the work I do within organizations is transformation within talent acquisition or human resources or leadership. And we talk about, we have to look at it from a people, a process, and a systems and tools perspective, right? And what do we typically do? We say, oh, this isn't working. We need a better tool. And we often go and we invest in millions of dollars in a new CRM or a new HCM or whatever the tool is that we're using. But what we didn't do is we didn't go way upstream and say, but what are our people's thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and habits around the work they do? And maybe these people were the ones who built the tools and systems that we're using today. So they have a really strong emotional connection to those processes, because 10 years ago, they're the ones who built it. And they probably worked really well in that moment. But maybe we've grown out of that. But if we fail to address their emotional connection and the habits and behaviors they have, what's going to happen? We're going to implement this new tool, and it's never going to be optimal, and they're going to create workarounds so that they can follow the same process that they did before, just with the new tool, right? So whenever I'm doing like a keynote or something, I'll say, how many of you here use technology at work? Everybody raises their hand. And how many of you here have a workaround for the technology you have at work? And they raise their hands, and I'm like, okay, so this sets the stage for exactly what I'm talking about. And it's because we neglect the people element of people, process, and systems.
Yeah.
And I love you hit that.
And the number one thing that employers, leaders can do, HR professionals, but again, I don't like to just say HR professionals, because it really has to be shared across the organization, can do right now in this time of immense change. And if they want to be prepared for what the future of work is going to look like, and if they want to be attractive and retain the people that they bring on board, is to start listening deeply. So that means beyond your annual once a year, your annual survey of employees, but actually going on listening tours, having listening sessions, having one-on-ones where you drop your defenses and go in with open hearts and open minds and really hear what people are saying, and then use that information to co-collaborate what the workplace is going to look like in the
Yes,
future.
love that.
Yeah,
Yes.
to work together. I don't know if co-collaborate is a word, but collaborate together, so that you are coming up with what is our culture going to look like? What could our processes look like that are going to better serve us now, and in the future, than what was happening before? And what often happens is, maybe there's like an attempt at listening, and that's usually just on like a piece of paper. And I mean, I've been in rooms of leaders where they're sitting there reading the comments, like figuring out who said what, as opposed to really like hearing it,
Right.
taking it in, hearing it, and then in the leadership bubble, kind of making decisions around the feedback that they just got, as opposed to including people in that conversation, and in the re-envisioning of what your workplace could look like.
Yeah, that's so important. I'm actually working on a graphic that talks about, being customer centric versus customer service, because I think there is a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas before, just like you said, it's kind of command and control, top down, like this is what we're going to do, versus co-creation.
Right.
Co-creation is so important because people need, and you guys have heard this, any of my loyal following, what do people want in the workplace, in life in general? They want to be seen,
Mm-hmm.
heard, valued, and understood. And to your point, how do we do that? We do that by listening, asking meaningful questions, and going deeper than the superficial answers you're going to get the first time. Because anyone who's ever done listening sessions, you'll all agree. I know that there are people out there nodding their heads right now. Christy Schutz, one of them. I know that she's done this before in her marketing work. When you ask, what would you change about your workplace? Or what's amazing about where you work? Or what don't you like? You get oh, it's fine. It's great.
Right.
So you have to be a skilled facilitator to ask questions that take them deeper, but also creating a safe space for them to know that they can share that information without any kind of fear of retaliation or being a target. It's truly an open dialogue. And I think that's the benefit of bringing people like you in, because you are that neutral third party who can listen without judgment, because you're not there. You're not their boss. You're not writing their performance reviews. And that's one of the things I find, and I'm sure you do as well, as a consultant who comes into organizations, people tend to open up to us perhaps more than they might open up to leaders, because we don't impact their review, their merit increase, their ratings, their day-to-day lives, right? So it's important for us to ask those meaningful questions, but then also help their leaders learn how to do that themselves.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. I think it's a combination of both. So you're right. I can go in and I will normally sit with people, and the first thing I say is that nothing you say is going to be attributed to you. You can feel safe unless, and I'll make a joke, unless you're selling drugs out the back door, then I'm obligated to tell. So don't tell me about that, but you can tell me your feelings, your thoughts, right? And they really open up to me. Sometimes it takes digging a little bit, but they will open up. But then I have also coached leaders on how to do this themselves. And really, they have walked away saying this may have been one of the most valuable things. And it's not always easy. I had an HR director say they started doing what they called penny for your thoughts. And she said, it was hard to see because their employees at the time were really not happy. And she said it was really painful to sit in those sessions. But a couple of years later, they had worked through so much, and it all started there, right?
Yeah.
With an organizational leaders who really weren't open to the idea of listening until they were forced to kind of go there. And then once they did, and they got through the initial painful sessions, people started feeling seen, they started feeling heard. And one of the things that you do immediately is that you look down the list, and there are going to be some no-brainer fixes,
Right.
that you could just take action on those things right away, and then start including people in the conversations about the longer term processes and things that you have to look at, because you as leaders have information they don't have, but they have information you don't have either.
Yeah. It's so interesting. You just reminded me of an experience I had with a team where I went in and I met with the employees and started asking these similar questions. And some of the low hanging fruit that was available was it was so obvious once you asked the question, because unless you're sitting in their seat doing their work or on the production line with them, you may not really, you think you understand what their day is like, but you really don't. And one of the asks was so simple. And again, unless you walk the walk with them throughout their 8-hour shift, you don't realize it. But the time clock in this particular situation, there was one time clock, and it was kind of in the back corner, and it was installed there many, many years ago, so it wasn't in the way. But what we didn't realize is for people to clock in and out for their breaks, it was taking like 3 minutes for them to walk over there and clock out, and then walk way over there to the lunchroom for their lunch, and then walk. So of their 30-minute break, 10 minutes of it was clocking in and out.
Right.
So for an investment of another $5,000, we got another time clock, and we put it right at the break room. So they walk over there, clock out for lunch, walk into the break room, and right? That was a simple fix, but they were so disgruntled because their 30-minute break was really only 20, and we didn't realize it, right? Until we went out there, we walked the walk with them, and we asked the questions. You would have thought I hung the moon by making one small change. And it was not rocket science, right? So I love that you say that. There's so many nuggets of amazing information and easy to make changes if we just ask and listen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fabulous.
And there's you said something really great too, is like walking the walk. So the first chapter of the book of Employees First actually features a baseball team in Savannah, Georgia, the Savannah Bananas. If you don't know them, you should look them up. It's just fun to see what they're doing. This incredible Jesse Cole and his team, the Savannah Bananas, so entertaining. But one of the things that they do is that they started with what they call undercover fan. And so everybody on the leadership team will take turns at games, taking off their uniform and actually sitting and going through the whole experience of parking, of getting seated, of getting your meals. And so they make decisions based on what their experience was as a fan. Then they started another practice called undercover employee. And so each leader will take turns working the concessions, or, being a parking penguin, which is the way they park people, or, some other role at the stadium. So that they can understand better what their employees are going through every day as well, and make decisions. This is a tool that's so easy to do, and I don't think we, utilize this enough.
No, we don't. And I worked for Amazon for a while, and they do a lot of things really, really well. And like any large company, there are things that don't work really well. But one of the things that I do love about the way they bring on leaders, if you're what they call a level 6, if you're a level 6 or higher, you go through your orientation week. It's a full week. And then your second week is you go into one of the distribution centers and you work every job in that distribution center for the first week. And you come out of there with an appreciation for what the hundreds of thousands of line employees go through every day. You pack the semi, you unpack a semi, you pick product, you pack boxes, you're out there hustling, and your performance is being measured. Like, are you able to pick it up, and that kind of thing. But and then they also practice lean and do Gemba walks and everything else, but they are adamant about staying in touch with what's happening at the line level, because they're also smart enough to recognize that most innovation in a company comes from line employees who make the recommendations to improve something which might seem really small, but it has a huge impact, like moving a trash can 4 inches to the left so that it's an easier way for me to throw the tape away after I put the box together. One small movement like that, when you trend it out to scale, is millions of dollars a day at a company that large. So innovation doesn't have to be introducing the next iPhone. Innovation can be moving a trash can or reducing, an injury risk by ensuring X, Y, and Z is stable. There's so many things that are actual innovation that we don't recognize because we're not out there in it with our people.
Yeah.
So I love that they are doing that, and it's so important for us to do at all levels of our organization.
It also sends a message to all of the line employees that their jobs are valued, right? Yeah. And of course, every organization has its ups and downs, and certainly we know Amazon has had its shares of downs as well, but I think they're looking at that, and I absolutely love that practice. And it's funny, you're reminding me, my dad used to work, when he was alive, he worked for a public supermarket. And
right here.
Yes, right in Florida. So he told me the story, and I forgive me if I'm butchering this a little, but the founder of Publix actually worked for a different chain years ago, and I think was trying to share ideas with the upper leadership, and they were not listened to. And so he left and started their competition, right? And so it would behoove us all to listen to people, at every level of the organization. Again, I think it's the number one thing that people could be doing right now.
I agree. And George Jenkins, who is the founder of Publix, the Jenkins family, is still there. The legacy they've created around service and how happy their employees are. I know a lot of folks who work there. Because their headquarters is about a 45-minute drive from here in Lakeland, Florida. And so a lot of my friends they started bagging groceries in high school, and now they're, massive store managers, and they'll retire very, very wealthy people because Publix invests in their people. Mm-hmm. And, I think their stock is about to split 5-1. They get it. Publix gets it, and they reinvest in their people and in their communities in meaningful ways. So yeah, they're a great organization to look at as an example.
Yeah.
There was a couple of things that you said. There's one thing that you said, and it reminded me of a meme I saw recently when you were talking about how, everybody went remote, and now there are organizations insisting that most, if not all, of their workforce come back in full-time or part-time, or they're creating this hybrid mentality or hybrid structure. And I saw a meme the other day, and I just love your thoughts on this, where it showed a person sitting in an office on a Zoom call. And the irony of it, right, is like we're forcing employees to come back into the office so they can sit on Zoom calls with all the other people who are not in the office.
Yeah.
And so I think some of this is just common sense.
Yeah.
Like, what is the reason why you're so adamant about everybody returning to office? Because if it's your culture doesn't live in the walls of your building. Mm-mm. So it's the intention that you have with the relationships and how we interact with one another, in my opinion. But I'd love your take on that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think it's still our comfort zone, right? I think people still, like, even after 2 years, which we thought this was going to last 3 weeks, right? Or a
Right.
month tops. But even after 2 years, I think people still like, can't we just get back to normal, right? Well, there is no getting back to normal, right? So we have to reinvent what normal looks like
Yeah.
and use some of what we learned during this time, the changes that we made to make ourselves better and more attractive. So if you think about just starting with a younger generation that is really focused on location independence, wanting to have experiences. They are far more entrepreneurial minded. So if you can create an opportunity for them to have that and still work for you and get the steady paycheck and get the benefits and all of those things, that's going to be more attractive to people. But it's not just that generation now, because we all experienced it, right?
Right.
We all collectively experienced, or many of us. I won't say everybody. There were definitely people who were, thank God for them, still showing up to work every single day. But those of us who did understand, oh, wow, now I can actually have more work-life balance. I can have, and there are also people who don't want it. I've talked to somebody who said, I can't wait to get back in the office. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so tired of, being here. It's really hard. So it's being open and being flexible to doing things differently. And one of the things you also said is, how can we create a culture? And you said culture doesn't live within your four walls. I mean, there is the whole ending chapter of Employees First is about an organization, Galactic Fed, who's for their entire existence has had employees all over the globe, and their founder hasn't like paid rent or a mortgage in several years because he can just be found. In fact, I think the two people that are highlighted in my book are now on safari in Africa somewhere. You know what I mean? And they've got this really successful organization with a really incredible culture, and they have found ways to connect people so that they have relationships, they have friendships at work. Their communication is probably more transparent, and definitely synchronistic, but also asynchronistic than what happens in a traditional workplace. And they've done it. I mean, you can create a very strong culture regardless of where your people are working.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think about, I have some friends who work at mid to small companies, and I say like 500 employees or less. And so they're typically co-located in one building. And they're like, but how do you keep everybody together and thinking the same way? And I was like, look at retail. Retail has been dispersed workforces since the dawn of time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And yet when you walk into Target, you see all those people there, and you walk into another Target and you see other people, but they're still employees of Target. They
Yeah.
still live the values of Target. So it's not a new concept to have people in dispersed workplaces, but for some reason we just still have such a hard time wrapping our head around people being at home or remote versus in a company owned building. It's just
Yeah.
bizarre to me, but I know there are people who really struggle with it, and we've just got to get them to understand that it's not a one size fits all. And I think that's kind of what you were touching on, is like, I believe the future, the today and the future, is creating as much individualization as we're able to do. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it's a free for all. It doesn't mean that everybody gets what they want all the time, but it means we at least entertain and have conversation around what can we do for you that would allow you to be as productive and happy as you can be. And some people might say, can I come into the office once or twice a week, as I do like that connection, but I get so much more done at home. and
Right.
and I think we've got to look at it from, what does that person need, what does the business need, and how can those things come together so that everybody wins? Because if we don't, someone's always on the losing end, and that
Right.
doesn't help anybody, right? So that
Right.
I don't understand.
Well, and I think we also sort of suffer from this black and white thing, just in general. This may be an unpopular opinion too, but like, it's this or that. It's the right way or the wrong way. And the reality is there can be so many right ways, right? And
Yes.
so we just have to open our minds and get out of our comfort zones a little bit. And then you may end up, creating a place where people are excited to be a part of it. And isn't that what we all want?
It is. It is. It's funny. We could talk forever. I say this so often, but we're getting close to time. But I wanted to show you. I wore this for you today. So I don't know if you can see this. So this shirt says, "We belong to each other." So I have a quote. And this quote was the very first thing I ever posted on Facebook. And it's still my Facebook cover image. And I have it on my wall over there. And it's a quote by Mother Teresa. And it says, "If we have no peace, it's because we have forgotten that we belong to each other."
Oh,
isn't that? And so I saw this sweatshirt online the other day and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's my favorite Mother Teresa quote. But I think it really does drive home what you're talking about, right? We are all interconnected.
Yeah.
And when we can help our employees win and feel valued and feel seen and heard, and we treat them the way they want to be treated, because everybody says treat people how you want to be treated. I'm not sure that's the golden rule. I think the platinum rule is treat people how they want to be treated.
Yeah, Tony Alessandra. Yeah, that's his book. Yes.
We've got to really recognize that we have to stop centering ourselves in these conversations all the time and start looking at what our people are asking and what works best for them. Mm-hmm. Because to your point, they might want to be in the office every day. Mm-hmm. That might work for them, whereas you don't. So you don't understand why they would want that option if it's available. So understanding that we are all connected, and whatever we can do to help another person will ultimately help ourselves and our organizations and our businesses. And that's what I think comes through so clearly here, is that when you treat your folks with kindness and empathy and humility, they are then going to turn that around and treat one another and your customers the same way. And isn't that what we're here for ultimately?
That's right? What it's all about. And I love your shirt, by the way. I love that quote by Mother Teresa. Thank you for wearing it, but also thank you for getting that, because I hope that people walk away reading Employees First with practical tools and ideas. But at the heart of this, it's really about people and the way we treat each other. And I think that if we can do the deep work to make people feel seen and heard and respected and cared about, we're not only creating better workplaces, but we're creating a better world. And that's what I really hope people will walk away with.
Wow, beautiful. I don't think you could have ended our conversation with a better sentiment. I love that. Just very quickly before we do sign off, if you guys are interested in reaching out to Donna for any of her services, check out her website, Red Carpet Learning, which is, an homage to her earlier book about rolling out the red carpet for your customers and now rolling out the red carpet for your employees. Like, if you don't realize that's what this is, that's what this image is all about, the carpet. Donna, thank you so much for being here. This was a phenomenal conversation. I hope you'll come back and join us again.
Love that.
We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. I would love to have you back. And again, thank you for all of our guests and all of the engagement and comments. Really appreciate that. And again, my name is Barbie Winterbottom, and I am at the Business of HR. And just we had a couple of people ask. I always download the show and then I upload it to the YouTube channel, the Business of HR. So you can watch this again or share it with your teams. If you have leadership teams that might hear this, you can always share it by going over to YouTube, to the Business of HR channel, and you'll be able to find us there as well. So thank you again. Thank you to our sponsor, Daily Pay. And we will see you all next Tuesday. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. And thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.